All right, let's take a few minutes and talk a little bit about data collection. So by that, I mean we're collecting data. Okay, so it might be for a survey or something like that. There's a couple of places we can get our data. The first type we call primary sources. By primary sources, we're talking about data you collect yourself. You get the actual raw data yourself. Okay. Secondary sources are where you get somebody else's data. Let's look at some examples. You might do a survey. Okay, and you do the survey yourself and you get the data from that. It's a primary source. You've got it yourself. It might be interviews. You've sat down and talked to people. It might be first-hand observation. So you might be, watching the number of people that cross a street, for example, and recording it yourself. So they're all examples of primary sources where you get the information yourself. Secondary sources, though, is where you go and get it data that has been collected by someone else, and it might be via something like the internet, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, something like that. So a secondary source, someone else has done the primary source collection, you're just using their data. All right, primary or secondary sources. I've got a big blob here. This blob actually represents my entire population. Now, be careful, because in data collection, when we talk about population, we're not just necessarily talking about a group of people. The population is the entire group of whatever it is we're studying. So, if we were surveying, for example, students in a school to find out their attitudes, say, towards, the canteen, the population would be all the students in the school. Okay, and it doesn't have to be people. It could be animals. If we were studying, the habitat or the health of frogs in a certain area, the population would be all the frogs in that area. So it's important you make that distinction. The population is everyone in the group that you're studying. All right. If we were to survey every member of the population, we call that a census. So if we were doing students in a school, for example, if we surveyed every student in the school, we would say that was a census. If we just took a small group, so not every student, but just a small group of students, we call that a sample. So if I grabbed 10 students, picked at random from within the school, I've taken a sample of the students. So why would we use a sample instead of a census? Well, it's going to be a lot easier and cheaper. Okay, so it's surveying the entire population could be expensive, take a long time. And we can also use the data. If you have a look here, we can make estimates about the population. But, just coming over to the right here, importantly, a sample should be large enough, though, to give us some useful data. So, it's no use me taking, say, 2 or 3 students out of a school and saying, oh, well, because, 2 out of 3 of my sample like the canteen food, then 2/3 of the students like it. It's a really small group. So, you have to be careful that your sample is large enough, that the data you get is useful when you start to make estimates about the rest of the population.